Hello, in this short video, I'm going to introduce the Ansible documentation and some easy ways that you can help contribute to that documentation. So what we're showing here is the latest version of the Ansible documentation set. A few things to point out. One here is edit on GitHub. This allows you to open up the file in the raw RST and make changes. We'll cover that in a separate video. We have a version switcher here that allows you to change from latest to devel. Latest is the stable release. Devel is the raw development version, which hasn't been released yet. Whenever we make changes like this edit on GitHub change that I talked about here, you're actually editing the devel version. And if we need that back in latest, that involves a backport, but that can be covered separately. What I wanted to introduce is that there's a couple of main sections in the Ansible documentation. Things here like I'm highlighting here. These guides are in RST, which means you can use edit on GitHub to change the content. These guides here, which are also in RST, are in the process of being moved someplace else because they're associated with what we call collections, and I'll get to that in a moment. So we're not necessarily paying a lot of attention to updates on these pages. Similarly, the Ansible Galaxy is not really being maintained. That's in the process of changing. And then we have the references. Number of these files are auto-generated. And to explain that, we have what I'll point to here as the collections. These are all the individual building blocks that's associated with Ansible. And if we look at one of these, you can see there's a plugin index, and we have different types of plugins. Some are called modules. And if we click on this, you can see there's some very detailed tables and whatnot. All of this information is listed directly in Python files in separate repositories. So at this point, we're not going to go over how to make changes there because that's kind of more advanced. And you'll notice there's also no edit on GitHub because we can't edit these files directly anymore. Coming back to the references and appendices, there are a number of other, let me shrink this down. There are a number of other pages like playbook keywords, configuration settings. These are also auto-generated from Python. So we won't really go into a lot of these files because that's more advanced for contributing to documentation. But coming back up here to things like the installation guide or the porting guides, these we do maintain heavily. And if you read them and you see some kind of spelling error or whatever, you can open a PR. Or if there's things that are confusing, we definitely want help making these better and better for our users. So that's basically the Ansible documentation set. Now what I'm going to do is I'm hopping over here. This is the repository itself. So it's the Ansible repository. The documentation is down here under docs, docsite, RST files. And there you'll see things like, if you scroll down, you can see the user guide and individual files in here. So with just a GitHub account, you can also do something like edit the file here, make changes, and then put a note of what your changes are. It automatically creates as a branch and you commit the changes. What that does is that creates a PR at that point. And you'll see that more in a separate video where we do edit on GitHub. But that's a simple way to come in and make the changes. But another thing, if you're not up for actually making changes, we do have a backlog of pull requests. So if you click the pull request tab and pick the docs only, what this label means is that it's only RST files being changed. And you can see we have 28 of those. So comments, reviews, always welcome on these.